And in a debate held on the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, there were some pretty remarkable exchanges revealing racial attitudes, not only by the candidates, but by the audience. Chris Matthews is the host of MSNBC's Hardball and joins me now. It was really stunning watching some of it. Let me play a little bit for you of what we saw. This was an exchange between Newt Gingrich and Juan Williams, one of the co-moderators of the debate.
I gotta tell you, my email account, my Twitter account has been inundated with people of all races who are asking if your comments are not intended to belittle the poor and racial minorities. You saw some of this reaction during your visit to a black church in South Carolina. It sounds as if you are seeking to belittle people.
Well, first of all, Juan, the fact is that more people have been put on food stamps by Barack Obama than any president in American history.
Of course, you could come up with the data to point out that we are in the worst recession in decades, or coming through the worst recession, and that the population has exploded. So there's a natural increase in food stamps, which are pegged to entitlements that are approved by Congress, that have nothing to do with the White House.
Yeah. Well, we know what's going on. And everybody knows what's going on, and to argue with it. The problem with arguing with it is that the people who don't hear it don't want to hear it, or they hear it and don't want to admit it. You can't argue a person into it. You can't say to a person that's code, because the people that don't want to hear that it's code will say it's not, and the people who clearly hear that it's code will. It's not something you can argue with a person. There were interesting aspects to that. Wasn't there some applause when he called him Juan? I mean, it's an interesting thing here. I mean, it's very clever. I mean, Newt's a very smart guy. He knows how to play an audience. There was a wonderful exchange between George Herbert Walker Bush and Pete DuPont one time where he answered a question to him, and he said, "Let me help you with that one, Pierre." Now, it is his name, and Juan is his name, but there's an interesting way it's used, and to personalize it. And Juan Williams has a lot of guts getting in front of that audience, that's conservative white audience in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and asking a question which is a reasonable question. I don't happen to agree with Juan on this. I think all work is good. Laborare est orare. To work is to pray. Janitorial work's as good as any other work. It serves a purpose. Kids can probably do. I went to Catholic school where the kids do most of the work. That's how Catholic schools operate. The kids do everything. They deliver the milk. They clap the erasers. They clean the blackboards. Right. They fix the books at the end of the year so the next year's kids can have them. I mean, there's a lot of things they do that I'm all for. Now, you can argue whether janitorial means black or not, but, you know, these are codes in some cases to some people.
Well, here was Newt Gingrich defending himself. Let's play a little bit of that.
Sure.
You could take one janitor and hire 30-some kids to work in the school for the price of one janitor, and those 30 kids would be a lot less likely to drop out. They'd be getting money, which is a good thing if you're poor. Only the elites despise earning money.
Well, that was a great line, actually, and I'm with him on that.
That was a home run for him.
I think it's a great line. But this is so mixed up. You have to. This is all going to be about coaxing people to go back to where they're going to vote. Now, I see in Mitt Romney's campaign, for example, a brilliant kind of boredom. That you can't blame a candidate for running a boring campaign, but it's going to be part of this return to normalcy.
It's almost a rope-a-dope thing.
It's return to
ahead.
Remember the campaign of Harding back in 21 after 8 years of Democrats, and it was like return to normalcy. We've had this exotica with Obama, you know, this sort of international global-only. We've been international. We have a guy that gets cheered over in Berlin, and so now we're going to call him a European welfare socialist and all that. It's this sort of idea of this has been kind of a turbulent time. Why don't we get back to something boring and bland again? And I think Romney's going to offer himself up to do that. Obviously, there are racial aspects to it. You can't blame the guy for being a racist or anything, but this is all going to be part of this campaign.
Well, you're not saying that it is, but let me just point out one thing.
I think that sometimes it's just very interesting to watch how it's done, because I do think that Romney is going to benefit from that. You know, David Brooks in his column today, boy, is he smart, talks about this sense that he sensed watching the debate in South Carolina, rather watching the campaign down there. There's a sense of a receding white culture of the past trying to reclaim something. Almost like, as I said, return to normalcy, regain what they had in terms of the white majority.
Well, one of the signals that was really out there was Rick Perry talking about states' rights.
Oh, secession.
Voting
he
rights.
talked about secession.
Let's look at this.
It's almost like nullification. We're hearing these words again.
In South Carolina?
Yeah.
Watch.
I'm saying that the state of Texas is under assault by federal government. I'm saying also that South Carolina is at war with this federal government and with this administration.
This whole idea of voter ID cards. Look, we've had big city. You and I know Philadelphia. There's been some irregularities over the years, and good reason. I'm being comic.
I know
they've been cheating, and I cannot stand the idea of a person cheating an election. But you know, you go to South Carolina. Not everybody has a driver's license. You're 70 or 80 years old. You're a black voter. You don't have a driver's license. You don't own a car, and so all of a sudden you say we got to have an ID card. Well, what would the ID card be?
Says that minorities are 20% less likely to have a driver's license.
It's called voter suppression. So I mean, obviously this is going to get very ethnic, very racial. It's going to get very hot. And I think you saw it there in that all-white audience there the other night. And I think it's going to be bad. I don't like it. And I think we're looking for signs of coaxing people back to their sort of tribal attitudes, you know, and how it's done. That use of the name Juan, the way he does it. You can't argue these things. You either see it or you don't. It's just the way he did that. I sensed a little applause when he said, let me help you, when he answered the Juan question.
In the eye of the beholder.
It's in the eye of the beholder. And by the way, calling somebody a racist is the worst way to get them to stop being a racist, because everybody gets defensive. Honestly, you say, don't call me a racist, and then they get mad about it. So it's stupid to say it, but if you notice it, you sort of ought to blow the whistle, because there is a dog whistle going on here in a lot of cases, and you have to deal with it. But boy, is it tricky. People watch me right now say, Matthews is calling something that's not there. Other people say, it's about time somebody called this. You know, it's our business.
Hardball, 5 o'clock
Eastern
tonight and 7
on
MSNBC.